Tendertips Asparagus is owned by the Lewis and Shaw families, who've been growing and packing asparagus in the industry since 1981. Based in Levin and Himitangi, the business is the second largest asparagus operation in the country.
Tendertips Asparagus is a packing business owned by two families, and we draw crop from our own suppliers. We have a Japanese fresh exporting business. We also supply the domestic fresh market in New Zealand, the supermarket business, and small volume to the canneries in Hawke's Bay. We bring in about 400 tonnes of asparagus a year, and we pack about 3/4 of that a year. The harvest goes from mid-September through to Christmas time. It's a spring vegetable, a perennial vegetable, which means it's a most unusual vegetable. It lasts year after year. So we have to allow the plant time to regrow again for its next season. We look for stable, warm conditions. That's what asparagus likes the most of all. In New Zealand, we have a marine climate, which means that, in the springtime we'll get equinoctial winds, strong westerlies, and it can be quite inclement, quite cool as well. So you're going to get a natural fluctuation of temperature.
We've got about 65, 70 hectares all up in production. Well, it's not all in production, some of it's at different stages younger. They pick about half of that a day, so we're running about 35 pickers a day up here regularly. Crew from Palmerston North, crew from Levin, and their RSC workers, 24 RSC workers, all Samoan. We need a steady, constant crew up here. It takes a new picker a couple of weeks to get into the swing of things, to pick the right length and the right size and clean the rubbish up. And so these guys are just steady, and we've just found it has been a huge problem here to get constant right through for the season, and we need them every day. Every spare is important, and I really emphasise that on the pickers this year. Everything you pick is so important. Good season, about 280, 300 tonnes. There's no wastage. Even if you think it's a wee bit rubbish, put it into the shed will sort it out just to get as much production as we can. As the season goes on, these spares will get thinner. The plant will start running out of energy, and that's why at Christmas time, although we've still got spares coming like that, we've got to stop, let it come up. It all goes to fern, half a metre to a metre, even metre and a half high, and we'll let it go to photosynthesise, put all the goodness back in for next year, and that generates next year's crop. These plants in this block, I think, about 8, 9 years old. They can run up to 12, 15 years. We'll start evaluating some of the fields and do how many plants per square metre to meter to whether it's worth picking, and that's when we decide to shut it up. Here it grows exceptionally well on the sandy, lighter country. We have to look after it a bit, probably with a bit more dirt, because it's a bit more porous with the dirt, but it seems to like the light country, except for the wind where we've developed these oats here to just help protect, and it forms a little climate in between each row.
The horticultural industry in New Zealand is evolving and changing all the time, and asparagus is one of those crops that is doing the same thing. So what we're finding now is that we're getting more corporate or family corporate type businesses where they are growing scale, where they are investing significantly in infrastructure themselves. We've got between $1 and $2 million worth of assets here just for post-harvest value adding. The medium-sized growers are tending to go because they don't have the infrastructure, they don't have the capital and plant. And then we have quite a large number of smaller growers who are specialist growers, so they may specialise in supplying farmers markets. We're harvesting every day. The crop's harvested early in the morning, so you've been out in the fields and the boys started there at first light. It comes into the pack house. The pack house started this morning at 8 o'clock. Our first run we did was for the supermarket trade here, because we've got some orders to get through to the South Island. So there's a big special on down there that we're having to supply quite a large volume to. And now we're packing again for export. And this is some of the export that we're packing today. So this has been through our warm water treatment to kill the quarantine pests, the thrips and aphids. And so this audit will be finished tonight. We'll go overnight to Auckland by refrigerated truck. The freight forwarders will pack it into shipments to go on the aeroplanes, and it'll be in Japan by tomorrow evening. So harvested this morning, in Japan tomorrow night. Back in the 90s, we had a lot of concern from our customers in Japan about the use of methyl bromide for killing quarantine pests. So we set up a research project with crop and food as it was then, it's now plant and food. And we said to them we would like to develop a method of disinfesting, not using chemicals to the point that it meets our quarantine export standards. They came up with two options. They came up with an option of using atmospheres, CO2, nitrogen, and a combination of those, and they also came up with a time and temperature option. And we went with that one eventually because the time and temperature was an easier one for us to manage. So the process that we use now is we run the asparagus through a very specific temperature. We've only got about a tolerance of 1 degree. If it's any cooler than that, we don't kill the thrips and aphids. If it's any hotter than that, we start to cook the asparagus. But it's only pure water, and so what we're doing is the boxes are immersed fully in water. They travel slowly through that, and the surface of the asparagus is heated, and that's where the thrips and aphids are. The asparagus passes through the warm water, and then we have to immediately take the heat out of the asparagus because otherwise it will degrade quite quickly. So it travels through one bath immediately into an iced bath where the water's running at about 2 degrees C. So it's really important that we get that heat out of the asparagus because shelf life is really important. Here we have a combination of people that live here in motorhomes. We call them our grey nomads. And we've also got local residences. We used to bring in workers on the working holiday scheme to work here in the packhouse, but we don't do that anymore. We just use New Zealanders entirely, and of that, our grey nomads would be about 60%. We have the staff doing the qualitative work, and so they are looking at blemishes on the stems, they're looking at if the tips are too open, especially for our export customers. There has to be a perfect spear, a perfect bunch for them. And then the other aspect of our grading is the quantitative work, which is around computers measuring, sizing the asparagus so that we get the weights exactly right. Our grader is a research project that we did with Massey University about 7 or 8 years ago. We needed very, very accurate weighing or sizing because we pack for them predominantly 100-gram bunches, and so if it's 105 grams, I've just given 5% away, and I've paid the air freight on the extra. So you know, accuracy is a really important aspect of what we do.
This program was made with funding from New Zealand On Air.